Wireless LAN, or WLAN, which I really don't think I've ever heard anyone refer to as WLAN, we normally just call it wireless or Wi-Fi, but just in case the exam uses the terminology, you need to know it. And I think most of us know what a wireless network is. It's just a network that links two or more devices using a wireless distribution method within a geographically limited area. That could be your home, a school, coffee shop, or the office building you work in. And if set up right, we can move across the building and still be connected to the network. And depending on how complete our setup is, there might be areas where we either have a weaker signal or we have no signal at all. Looking at the graphic over here on the right, you can see one of the laptops is outside the coverage range of any of the wireless access points. If it was important for our staff to have wireless in that area, we might deploy another access point over there. It's very common for wireless LANs to provide an internet connection, but they don't always. They might just be for our internal network and not allow our users to get outside. 99.9% of all the wireless we use today is based on IEEE 802.11 standards, and they're all marketed under the Wi-Fi brand. We obviously use Wi-Fi because it's much easier. We can move around, we're always connected, we don't need to have a cable, but it is also much easier to compromise compared to a cabled connection. This could be with a rogue access point. A rogue access point is an access point that's been added to our network without us knowing about it, and definitely not being approved. This could both be from attackers or just internal employees wanting Wi-Fi in an area where there's no or little coverage. If they're successful in adding the rogue access point and it's an internal employee, their access point most likely won't meet our security posture. So if a hacker can compromise that access point, they have access to our network. In the case of an attacker, they can use the same name for the access point that we use for our corporate access points, then users connect to it, and they can sniff all the traffic from all the users that are connected to their access point. Rogue access points can somewhat be mitigated if we have proper port security on our switches, and we should also do regular scans for rogue access points. If a rogue access point is deployed successfully, it can compromise both our confidentiality and our integrity. Jamming or interference is another thing we need to take into consideration. This can also be malicious and non-malicious. It could just be that our office is in an area where there are 50 other access points. All the wireless channels are crowded. In that case, we can either look for a less crowded channel, or if possible, we can change the frequency. The 2.4 GHz band is very heavily used, whereas the 5 GHz band is a lot more empty. If both our access points and our equipment can support 5 GHz, maybe it's time to switch. And if it's malicious, it could be an attacker just sending out a bunch of noise on the channel we use, on the frequency we use. It's a denial of service attack. It's really just there to disrupt the integrity and the availability of our data. And there are many different things using the 2.4 GHz band that can cause that interference. Again, both malicious and non-malicious. Bluetooth operates on that band, microwaves, cordless phone, baby monitors, other people's Wi-Fi. If we have issues with interference or drop signal, we should do a network analysis. Figure out what it is that's interfering with our network. A good chunk of years ago, I remember a company having problems with the wireless. The problem was intermittent, they couldn't figure out what it was. Finally, by random coincidence, they realized the wireless access point was close to the microwave. It was a very old microwave. They initially moved the access point a little further away. That helped a little, but not enough. Whenever anyone would heat their food in the microwave, they would lose connectivity to the wireless. Finally, the solution was very technical. They bought a new microwave. So sometimes it's just those weird things in our environment that actually makes a difference. An evil twin is taking the rogue access point a step further. This is not the employee just wanting a little bit faster internet connection or a wireless connection in the area they're in. This is an intentional act. The attacker just names their access point the same as ours, with no password. Whenever a device that's set to auto-join that network name comes into range and the evil twin access point has the best signal, it'll switch over. If it's an internal evil twin, it's connected directly to our network, but it could just be someone on the outside trying to capture our data. Over to the right on the graph, you can see both the internal and external evil twin. If we look at the same laptop we looked at before, the one that was almost out of coverage, it will probably switch to the outside evil twin, allowing them to capture our data. If that employee was using something on our internet, a resource that's only local to our network, they would lose that connectivity. In many cases, it would be found out this way. Whereas the internal evil twin, they wouldn't notice. It's just another network with the same name, and they actually have access to our internal resources. To them, they can't tell the difference. And just like the regular rogue access points, our confidentiality and our integrity can be compromised. And we want to scan for them, as well as ensure we have the proper port policies and security posture in place that prevents employees or anyone not authorized to add access points or switches to our network. In the 802.11 standard, we find another MAC abbreviation. This time it's Media Access Control. And just like any other abbreviation, where we have multiple types of it, it will be spelled out very clearly in the exam which one they're referring to. Over on the right, we have the different types of 802.11 protocols that have been in use and are in use now. As you can see, it's a slow progression. As the protocol has evolved, we're getting faster and faster speeds. 802.11a and b are not really used anymore. G is a little bit, but mostly we use N or AC. N is by far the most commonly used, and it can use both the 2.4 and the 5 GHz bands. We use N first off because a lot of technology is built for it, but also because it has a good mix of range and speeds. For the exam, I wouldn't really bother with when the different 802.11 protocols was released, but I would know the frequency they operate on, the speeds they support, and a rough idea of how long the range is. Easy rule of thumb, all of the ones in use today, and most of the legacy ones, are about 35 meters in range, or 115 feet. The only one that has a longer range is 802.11n, which has twice that, 70 meters, or 230 feet. We already talked about how the 2.4 GHz band can be really crowded. This is in part because all the stuff that uses that frequency, but also because most access points are as default set to use that frequency. Over on the right, you can see a little graph from a wireless sniffer showing the different wireless access points using that channel as well as the signal strength. If that was my network and I was having problems, I might change the channel on my Wi-Fi to channel 8 or 9 where there's really no one right now. Or if even more crowded, I would probably switch to the 5 GHz band, which comes with some upsides and downsides. It is faster, it is less crowded. It's not good if you have a lot of hard surfaces, if you need to go through concrete walls. So depending on our environment, we choose the wireless frequency that's going to work for us. It is also pretty common on newer access points that they're aware of other wireless access points in the area, and they can dynamically change the channel they use to find the optimal channel and provide less overlap. And if in our organization we have multiple access points through a building where our users have that seamless experience, it's common for them all to be controlled by a central system that can, just like the access point themselves, change the channel to make sure they don't overlap on channels and cause too much noise for each other. Our wireless network cards can operate in 4 different modes. In managed or client mode, the client connects to the access point, and once connected, the client can only communicate with the access point. It cannot communicate with any other clients on the access point. That's what we normally use. In master mode or infrastructure mode, the card can only communicate with clients that are in managed mode. This is what we use for wireless access points. The access point must have the same SSID or service set identifier as the clients are connected to. And if encryption is used, the same keys have to be shared. We have to use the same authentication parameters. In ad hoc mode, the wireless network card doesn't require an access point, but it can connect with other wireless devices directly. And for them to do so, all the nodes in an ad hoc network must use the same channel and the same SSID. Other than just using it to share between the different clients, we can also use it if one of the computers has an internet connection. We can advertise the ad hoc VLAN, allowing others to use the internet access of that client. Think of this like hotspot sharing. In monitor mode, or RFMON, radio frequency monitoring, our wireless network card can monitor all traffic received from a wireless network. But unlike promiscuous modes that we use on our Ethernet switches, in monitor mode we can capture the packages without having to be associated with the access point on the hard network. We just capture whatever flies through the air, which is why we want to encrypt our wireless communication, just like we do everywhere else. If our encryption is strong enough, it doesn't really matter that someone can pick our traffic up, because really, what are they going to do with it? They can't break it. A service set, or an SS, is a set consisting of all the devices associated with an organization's wireless local area network. And for that, we use a service set identifier, or more commonly referred to as an SSID. That's the name you connect to when you see a wireless access point. And if our organization has multiple access points, so we can seamlessly move through the offices and have a constant connection, the SSID would be the same on all the access points. For a client to connect to our wireless, they would need to know the SSID. And the SSID is something we can configure. We would log into our wireless device, change the name, change the SSID, set up which type of encryption we want to use, the encryption key, if we want us to use a specific channel, and if we want to broadcast the SSID. They are by default enabled to broadcast, and it is a security measure. If we do not broadcast, that means the clients have to know the name and the password to connect. But really for any hacker, it's incredibly easy to find the SSIDs we use, because they're broadcast. Remember the wireless sniffer we looked at earlier? Some of those SSIDs might have been hidden. They don't broadcast it, but we can still see the traffic from it. Really, it doesn't do much. Just like our Ethernet network cards have the MAC address or the BIA address, so does our wireless network cards. And we can choose to allow access based on MAC addresses, just like we can on our regular switches, but it really again doesn't do much. Any of the 802.11 protocol, which is the wireless protocol, sends the MAC addresses in plain text. It's really easy to pick that up and spoof the address. You can probably do it in less than 5 minutes. So again, a security feature that's there, but most of the time not something we bother with because it's just too much work and not enough result. Let's look at some of the types of encryption we use for our wireless. The web protocol, or wired equivalent privacy, was a very early form of wireless encryption from 1997. It is no longer secure and should never be used. Multiple vulnerabilities was found in it, and it is actually possible to break the encryption, regardless of how long the password is, within a few minutes. It could have been a lot more secure, and there were talks about it at the time, but they chose to go with a 40-bit encryption because of the Wassenaar agreement. That way it could be exported, which then also made it much weaker than it should have been. Many of the access points we see today still have the web option, which obviously should never be used, but most of them are pre-configured to work out of the box with WPA2 PSK. Web uses 10 or 26 hexadecimal digits, making it either 40 or 104-bit. Both of them are easily broken. Web was widely used because at the time it was, well, the only one that was there and would work with most devices. But obviously as better encryption came along, it was phased out. Web doesn't use timestamps and it has no replay protection, which means that an attacker can eject traffic by replaying previously sniffed web packages. The next protocol that was widely used was WPA, Wi-Fi Protected Access. It was released in 2003 and was made to address some of the issues that web had. Again, we should not use this unless WPA2 is not an option. If it's not an option, we should ask ourselves why it's not, and then probably fix that instead. Plain WPA uses RC4 and TKIP, Temporal Key Integrity Protocol, and neither of those are secure anymore, which means that WPA is not secure either. TKIP uses a per packet key, meaning it has a dynamically generated 128-bit key for each packet, which would prevent some of the attacks that compromised web. And WPA was also designed to be backwards compatible with hardware that was built before the introduction of the WPA protocol. WPA2 was released in 2004 and is also called RSN, or Robust Security Network. It is the current standard we use, and the most secure form of WPA2 is WPA2 PSK, Pre-Shared Key. It's using AES. AES provides the confidentiality. CCMP, or Counter Mode CBC MAC protocol, provides a message integrity check, which, well, provides integrity. And WPA2 can be configured to use older, less secure protocols like TKIP. And that brings us to one of the tricky points. Yes, if unpatched, WPA2 PSK can be vulnerable. Someone found a vulnerability in it, which meant at the time, every single wireless network in the world using WPA2, even if they used the pre-shared key, were vulnerable. As good security managers or risk advisors, we would obviously have recommended that our networking team apply all the patches so our systems are no longer vulnerable. For the 2018 version of the exam, I would assume they have included this vulnerability in the questions they may have on WPA2 PSK.